Welcome to the Town of Arlington Redevelopment Board meeting on March 9th. I call this meeting to order. My name is Ken Lau. I am the chair. Can the other members of the board please introduce themselves, starting with Steve?
Steve Revelak.
Vincent Baudouin.
Shayna Corman Houston.
Rachel Zamberi.
And we are joined by Claire Richter and Sarah from the planning department.
Thank you.
First on the agenda is Affordable Housing Overlay District. Feedback from the board. Would like the opponents to come up and you got something you want to share with us, or you just want the feedback from us?
We mostly want your feedback. Do you want us sitting at that table?
Yes, anybody attending from home can hear what you have to say.
And when you both up here, Laura.
Yes, it's for the millions of viewers in ACMi land.
You want to hold up
Good evening. I'm Carol Kowalski. I'm the co-chair of the Affordable Housing Overlay District Committee. I'm one of the Redevelopment Board's designees to the committee, and Laura Weiner is the other co-chair.
I'm the designee of the Housing Corporation of Arlington.
And we've worked, as you know, for the past several months. We met, I think, 12 times last year. It's a great committee, very good and collaborative. And we're working first on the planning part of this endeavor, which includes the geographic location, proposed geographic locations for a 100% affordable housing overlay district. And as the board recalls, an overlay district is an additional optional land use available to owners in a district. It does not change the use unless it's used for this purpose. The other zoning would always stay in place, including any other future zoning overlays that might be placed on the property. So we provided the board with all of the locations we're considering, and we know that you've had that in hand for a while, and we hope you've had a chance to take a look at it, and we'd love to get your feedback on it. The rest of the time over the next few months, we intend to meet with the public, to do a lot of community engagement around this, but we certainly wanted to hear the board's feedback first.
Thank you very much. Steve, do you want to start this, or?
Sure, I'm happy to do so. So first, I want to just commend the work that you've done in the last couple of months, because it is a substantial amount of work, and you've also done quite a few public meetings. So the effort is not lost on me by any measure. So in your memo, the committee asked for specific feedback on a couple of specific things. So I'd just like to go through and try to address them. First, having two districts, the corridor and the neighborhood districts. I felt that made sense. It sort of fits with, I think, a lot of people's conceptual model of Arlington, and it also follows the model that we've used for the MBTA communities districts. I think it is reasonable to limit mixed use to the corridors, given the constraints that, I'm aware of for affordable housing funding. I'd expect, any mixed use to be primarily community service organizations like Arlington Eats and whatnot. I think that's appropriate for a corridor because those organizations tend to provide, valuable community services. I saw that the mixed-use bonus would allow a 0-foot front setback, but no increase in height. I think that's a fine place to start. In section 593, this is the only, real wording suggestion. I would say strike the phrase, but not limited to. Although that 593 seems to be taken from similar language regarding the MBTA Communities District, where the AG's office warned us against using the phrase, but not limited to in the context of could be covered under site plan review. Half a parking space per dwelling seems reasonable. I believe that's, similar to what the Housing Corporation of Arlington has. And, as a young adult out of music school, it was a couple of years before I could afford a car. So, I think that's fine. And regarding setbacks in open space, I'd like to see yards regulated just through setbacks. Residential land in Arlington is expensive, on the order of millions of dollars an acre, and the yard is, yards are luxury, and I understand that we're making cost trade-offs here. In terms of the list of sites, I had previously sent a couple of suggestions, and I have no further ones at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Vince, do you want to comment on something, or I know you just joined the board, and have you had a chance to review this?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I looked through the proposal, and thank you for bringing it to us tonight. So for the members of the public who haven't had a chance to look at it, it is in the board agenda, and it includes a list of sites and a zoning overlay proposal that would allow for larger buildings as long as they're affordable. The list of sites to me seems to be a very comprehensive list of the larger parcels of land in Arlington that would have some potential as affordable housing, even though I think many of them, for various obvious reasons, wouldn't actually be redeveloped because their owners wouldn't intend to. But I still think they all make sense for inclusion in an overlay district. Basically, let me do one nitpick in 5.9.13. The term AHO is used without definition. I think you'll want to lead off by explaining that it's affordable housing overlay. The one way of that we've looked at it, that I was looking at it, was the structure and the language is very similar to the MBTA communities overlay districts. I had made the suggestion, and this was just directly speaking with the proponents, I had made the suggestion that they might study whether extending the MBTAC overlay districts would make some sense rather than creating new parallel language. But I'm really phrasing that as a question. I don't know whether that would accomplish your goals or not. So I don't want to insist on that too much. The mixed use bonus. The mixed use bonus makes the most sense to me when it's pedestrian-oriented uses, when it's shops, restaurants that are coming up to the street. I'm a little uncertain whether it's as appropriate if it's something like an office for a nonprofit. I think that would be, up for discussion, but I think that, in terms of your proposal, as long as the mixed-use bonus is focused on the corridor districts, then I think, at the very least, that's the kind of streets where we want to see buildings coming up to the street. Let's see. I think that's all of the comments I had. I'm really supportive of this. I think it's a nice way to encourage a few new projects. I think, again, looking at the list of sites, there's just so few of them that would be developed immediately, and obviously the obstacles to building affordable housing are fairly daunting, but this is a great proposal, and I look forward to helping out bring it to town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Shanna?
So I appreciate your work on this. You've clearly done quite a bit. I have two thoughts. One is a little bit nitpicky, to use Vince's language. I would suggest you swap 5.9.1 and 5.9.2, no language changes are needed, but that would, just for consistency with the multifamily overlay, that's how it's ordered there. And then my other thought is with the site list. I saw that you had some houses of worship on that list, and I would encourage you to think about adding all of the houses of worship in town. As I imagine you're aware, there's legislation in front of the state right now, YIGB legislation that would create zoning opportunities for affordable housing, for multifamily redevelopment of religious sites, but it's not clear what would happen there. And I think this would be a nice complement to that legislation anyway. So.
Thank you. Rachel?
Great, thank you. I really appreciate the website that you shared. It's wonderful to see such a comprehensive overview of all of the work that's been done, including the community engagement pieces. So thank you for that. That's a great body of work. I think I'll start with the sites and then move to my comments on the zoning itself. So for the sites, and I suppose this first point really is a commentary on both. I think it's important to remove all of the sites in the business and industrial districts unless they are included specifically if there is a mixed-use component. We have a significant goal of increasing affordable housing in this town, but it's not at the expense of eroding our very, very meager commercial and industrial properties. I think that there is certainly an opportunity for mixed-use development with a significant affordable component, which I think this can address. But I would not include those sites unless they are specifically, unless they specifically include the mixed-use component. I'd also remove the Russell Common parking lot. This is a significant redevelopment opportunity for the town that the redevelopment board has had quite a few discussions around, and I think it would be a significant miss for the town if this was a single-use redevelopment. We've talked a lot about the opportunity to be able to meet a lot of the needs of the town, and potentially at different, higher dimensional requirements than even what this proposal is putting forth. So I would not include that property. I'll move now to the specific zoning, and I think Vince brought up a really interesting point. What I'm struggling with is the complexity of adding 2 new overlay districts in addition to the 2 new overlay districts that were just created for the multifamily overlay districts. It seems overly complex. I hadn't thought until Vince mentioned this about perhaps adding this as an addendum or somehow structuring this as a way to amend the 2 multifamily overlay districts. I think that might be a good question for town council as well. Again, I think one of our goals as a board is to remove some of the overly onerous and complex items within our zoning bylaws, and every time we continue to add additional items such as this, instead of using the bones of what's there, it's a question as to how complex are we making this? Is it digestible? And that was my first thought when I saw the two districts. There were a couple of other questions in here. Again, the question around the 0 front setback. I would only be in favor of that if it was in tandem with the mixed-use requirement, similar to our multifamily overlay district where there is a requirement for 60% minimum commercial use on the first floor, and that it meet the active use requirements as opposed to a business, an office for the entity, or an element that is not as defined in our multifamily overlay district. I think that in 5.93, there's an addition, the last sentence is something that was added that we don't have in the multifamily overlay district, and I don't think it's necessary. 5.9.1, number 4, the dispersion of affordable housing throughout the town. I don't know that that was a stated goal, and I think that's a question for the board. I agree with the first 3 goals of the project. It may be, but I don't know that that was necessarily a goal of the creation of the overlay district. What is a goal is locating this adjacent to regular public transportation options, specifically given the reduction in parking. So that may be something to think about instead of what's stated in number 4. In 5.9.4, I would remove SROs, assisted living, and group homes from allowable types by right. Similar to our underlining zoning, I believe that those should still require a special permit. And I also think that we need to add in that the accessory uses should be allowed to the same extent as permitting in the underlying zoning. 5.9.4D, in terms of what we are eliminating as requirements based on the underlying zoning, I would not eliminate 5.3.7, especially for parking lots. I think that's really important when these parcels that are being redeveloped abut residential properties. They need to have screening for the parking lots. That's really for the benefit of the adjacent residences. In section 5.3.17, upper story setbacks should apply. They should not be eliminated as a requirement. We need to create architectural facade articulation, especially if we are going to be allowing up to 6 stories in some of these developments. Let's see. We talked about, we're reviewing the zoning.
It's on the board right there.
Yeah, the draft zoning that was part of the materials that were provided in the agenda. Let's see. Again, I mentioned the mixed use bonus. I think that needs to be further defined. I'm also a bit concerned with the elimination of the percentage coverage of the solar bylaw, given, again, our sustainability goals as a town, and I believe that the signage should be governed by the underlying zoning district. Those were my initial items. I will say that I did not complete a comprehensive review of the sites that were identified, given, again, that I thought that there were some bigger, broader items that were important for review first.
Thank you, Rachel. I 100% agree with what Rachel stated as far as having too many overlays and making zoning so complex in our town of Arlington here. I think we're, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're like one of the top 5 towns in the state that has the most regulations for zoning, and it just makes no sense. We're trying to regulate things out by making it so complicated. So the board does have a goal of simplifying things and making it easier for the everyday person to just work with the zoning. I also like to take maybe a little broader picture of what you're looking at right here. Oh, well, let me. I also like the rest of the board commend you for all the amount of work you've done so far. It's quite great. Right now, you're looking at large parcels with large buildings, and I'm assuming has to do something with funding for affordable, 100% affordable housing. Have you guys looked into smaller projects that's more distributed throughout town, so they're not as dense? I'm thinking of also looking at taking advantage of some of the new codes we have right now, where a 3-story building that's sprinkled doesn't need 2 means of egress. Going with 3 stories, you don't need an elevator. These kind of things that can make the building more economical just to start off with, and instead of building these 6-story buildings that require two means of egress, stairs, elevators, and I was thinking similar way. I don't know, Shane, what you said earlier about making it complementary, but let's say we have a Mass Ave overlay right now with MBTA. But what about the next layer out there? Maybe it can work in conjunction with that, because with commercial space, which we have so little of, which Rachel mentioned, what supports the commercial space is people, housing. So if you don't have enough housing around your commercial, the commercial dies. That's just the way it is. So if we were to take the next ring, I'm asking, did you guys get a chance to look at the next, say, ring outside the MBTA, or mixed-use overlay, or something that can work in conjunction with all these other zoning changes, so it works together, or would smaller projects work? I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with the funding.
Do you mind if so please correct me if I'm wrong. It is exceptionally difficult to develop 100% affordable housing projects that are smaller than about 30 units. I see it done occasionally at 20 units. Home ownership, sometimes you can pull off 10 units, but smaller than that. You alluded to the way it's funded, and that's exactly right. It's exceptionally difficult to make it happen smaller than about 30 units, which I imagine is the thinking behind the size of sites that was used as the threshold in the overlay.
Well, could I ask a question? No, I can't ask a question.
Well, can you wait till the board finishes discussing, and then I will open it up to the public, and you certainly can ask questions, but let's discuss it. It's in order what we do here. Okay, thank you. Steve.
There's, at one of the, just to follow up on the note about the solar requirement, did qualified action plans come into play in that, thought about removing it?
I think the short answer is yes. We are trying to make sure that we are not proposing anything that's going to make it impossible for an affordable housing developer to get financing.
Right, and just so jargon, qualified action plan, if I'm not mistaken, is what sort of the state requires of affordable housing developers. And there are some sustainability measures, and it seemed, what I got from reading the draft was that you're basically trying to go along with what the state is willing to support and what the state requires and will fund. Is that roughly correct?
Yes, and Beth Elliott from the Affordable Housing Overlay District Committee is also here today. So She has a lot more expertise on the QAP than I do, so she's right here at my elbow if you need her.
That is generally practice.
Okay, thank you.
Vince?
Yeah, can I ask a question of the proponents? So if you were to move forward with a proposal that required mixed use in business and industrial districts, and at least for MBTA communities, we're defining mixed use as eating and drinking establishments, businesses, services, childcare, and one other. I'm just wondering, for the kind of projects you're proposing, what would that mean? Would those projects be equally doable? Would it add a lot of difficulty?
They're not equally doable. They're not, if you go to get low-income housing tax credits to the state, you have to include a marketing plan that shows that, a market study that shows that you have a reasonable expectation. In some instances, they want to see that you have a tenant already to support that, because the low-income housing tax credit funding can't support the construction of the non-residential space.
So you'd be looking for other sources of funding, a loan or some other source of funding to do that portion of the project?
Along with the other sources of affordable housing funding, in addition to the LIHTC funding.
Cobble it all together and demonstrate that it would be not a loss for the project. Thank you.
I consider it a poison pill. There are others, but it's very challenging. We have fortunately had a number of affordable developments. HCA has been good at developing affordable with space for a nonprofit. But there's only so many nonprofits with their own funds who can come and put that into the funding stack.
Was there any other comments from the board here?
One more. There's regarding the the commercial and industrial sites. I mean, looking at this holistically, I think there are. I would be comfortable, including those sites, particularly since we don't allow very intensive development in the business and industrial districts anyway. And realistically, I mean, our business districts are small. We ask them to do a lot. And I don't, while I would love to expand the commercial tax base, I think that we need a much more significant map change in order to accomplish that. So I'm just speaking for myself here. This is an area where we will have a diversity of opinions among board members probably, but that is my take.
Thank you, Steve. I was going to make a suggestion that it's very hard to sit in this kind of forum meeting here to go over all the individual sites and stuff like that. I would ask the board would be willing to maybe have a retreat on some time where we can just focus on just some of the lands, and we just put that up on the screen and say, hey, what are the pluses, minuses? We can go back and forth on this and talk about this, because just to arbitrarily have a list in front of us and review it, I don't think that gives it fairness for everything. And I would like to see what the board thinks about that, about having a retreat that we can review some of these, because there's quite a difference of thoughts. Like, I don't think similar to Steve right now, but that's okay. As far as I don't want to give up commercial space or business space. It's important to me. I want to just maybe increase it a little bit and consolidate it, but that's something separate, okay? So I think it needs to be more of a broad discussion instead of just something that we talk about in this meeting here as a little topic. So does the board feel like they're willing to invest some time in looking at those spaces, or this I'm a pie in the eye kind of suggestion here.
So if I could make a potential suggestion, when the board was reviewing the potential sites for MBTA communities, we were able to create time when each of the board members kind of paired off and went to visit each of the sites, to understand each of the individual sites before finalizing the list. That, not suggesting that specifically is what we do, but I think that is one way potentially of looking at that. And then perhaps what you're suggesting, more of a workshop following something like that, where again, I think I would like to make sure that we whittle down the list beforehand to an appropriate grouping that there is more consensus from the board around before we take that step. But I would suggest that as a potential way to address what you're putting forth to the board.
Sure. I personally have visited sites, all of them, and have given the committee my list of opposition to some of those sites that they selected already. But I would welcome the rest of the board to do likewise in the next coming weeks, and then maybe meet up or have a workshop about that. But let me continue. What's your thoughts, Shane?
Yeah, I think it sounds like a great idea. I was not on the board when the process for MBTA communities happened, but it sounds like if it worked well, then it would make sense to try it again.
Vince?
I'm happy to participate. I think I'm not likely to have a lot of objections about specific sites, because my feeling about how we would want to approach this is we'd have to create a district or an overlay, you'd have a set of criteria that is fairly neutral, that's, parcels of a certain size, located perhaps along certain corridors or with certain uses, but then I wouldn't necessarily see myself taking sites out for one reason or another. So I'd be curious to hear from the other members of the board if you've got certain ground rules that you want to apply to the different sites, and we could go into a discussion based on what are the different ground rules and see if we can come to an agreement.
We can talk about that. I sort of mentioned what I thought were good ground rules were, it would work outside the MBTA zoning overlay, and it would work outside the mixed use, because I think mixed use is extremely hard to do for 100% affordable housing. So, yeah, I think we can talk about that. I think that's a great idea. Steve?
Yeah, I'm probably, to sort of answer Mr. Bedoin's question in terms of like criteria, knowing with the expectation that LIHTC would be, low-income housing tax credits would be a primary source, sort of my philosophy for site selection would be where can you get to 30 or more dwellings on a parcel, which, probably half an acre and up is, the criteria. With respect to dispersing them throughout town, there are pros and cons. One is that the further away you get from the corridors, the fewer transportation options there are. But I do think there is sort of a level of income segregation that's sort of baked into our map as it is. And I'm not opposed to trying to, peel some of that back. Thank you.
All right. Is that pretty much, any more comments?
I'll just add one, I think, Steve, to your comment. I agree with you, and that's kind of the balance that we're trying to weigh. For example, some of the sites that were located adjacent to Route 2, for example, I could imagine might have, because of the distance from the same public transportation options as those that are along Mass Ave and Broadway. My challenge with this zoning article in general, and not through anything, not through anything that from that has to do with the thought and care that's gone into the creation, but just what I'm trying to hold in my head. For example, I could imagine that the parking requirements might want to be different for a site like that is more car dependent than others. And I think that that becomes a lot of variability that needs to either be baked into the zoning, or the question as to whether or not this should be an as-of-right overlay district, because there is so much nuance to hold in those different types of sites, is where I'm struggling right now. I think that there is a lot of complexity when it comes to this range of individual sites that's been put on the table in terms of how to make them potentially the best project that they can be, which is ultimately, I know, the goal of the committee and the goal of the board. So I really appreciate being given the sites and the proposed zoning for this meeting today. This was a lot to kind of go through, and I think we've put a lot on the table, but I think I'm still struggling with that again, the different needs, and whether there is a one-size-fits-all overlay district which can make the best project for this range of sites that we're doing, or that we're hoping to accomplish, or is a more targeted overlay district that has sites that are more alike than different, as opposed to just their acreage, whether that would be something that is more feasible. So that's a general question that I have, that I'm working through right now. Hope I articulated that correctly.
I mean, that was the reason that we have two types of overlay, two sets of requirements, one in more residential zones and one in more commercial zones.
Right.
Was to try to address, to at least have two sets of requirements. I don't know how you would have a requirement that would be tailored to every parcel.
And again, I think that's I completely understand. And so, for example, the parcel next to Route 2, I could imagine, again, where it's not that it's in a residential district per se, but because of its proximity and, parking dependency, it's a different, I think that's a great site for affordable housing development. The question is, does it, is an as-of-right solution what is going to make the best project for each of these? And that's my general question.
All right, thank you. I'm going to open this up quickly to public comment. Does anybody have any comments? Yes?
Yeah, I have.
Can you please come up to sit there, state your name and address, and then state your question, please?
You can see I'm a newbie to this,
That's fine.
even though I've lived in Arlington for over 40 years. So my name is Lori Champagne. I live at 40 Hopkins Road. So that's off of Pleasant Street, the historic district of Pleasant Street, and it's a street that dead ends into Spy Pond. So I had a couple questions. One, I'm wondering whether it's this committee or another committee, that looks at this affordable housing in the context of an overall Arlington development plan. For example, when I see that list of places, this may be all of the ones that are being considered for affordable housing, but there could also be developed in other ways that where people are not necessarily coming forward, but where the Arlington Town Meeting or whatever should be thinking of ways proactively to develop it. So what I see, if all of those properties get turned into affordable housing, I guess I have a ton of questions, right? Because that increases the density of Arlington way more than it already is, which we already have a very dense town, okay? Way more dense than any of the surrounding towns except for Cambridge. So did you want to make a comment there?
I'm just going to say that we were assigned by
Town
the
meeting.
town meeting to form a committee to look at potential sites.
Okay.
Just because they list a site doesn't mean it's going to be built, okay?
And so I'm-
no, let me
Yeah,
finish.
okay.
Okay. This is not a forum right now in which you want to engage in, okay? They do have public outreach meetings that will be coming up that will be doing this, and I wish you would come to any of those meetings or all those meetings.
I will.
And
yeah.
please engage and talk to them.
Yes.
But this is just a start of checking in with this committee because
Okay.
the board gave them charge to do so, and we're just giving an update, okay?
Okay, so you're saying my questions are not appropriate?
No, your questions are fine. It's
Okay.
not appropriate at this tenure right now. I wish you discuss those at their meetings when they say, and they will be having those meetings coming up, yes?
Yeah, we haven't scheduled them yet, but yeah.
But they'll be coming up soon, okay? And then the
Well,
public.
they haven't scheduled them
We
yet, so.
probably need to, well, we're trying not to interfere with this year's town meeting, so I think it might end up being after. I don't know, we haven't figured it out.
Can I ask you, are you looking at the overall impact on the town and also the tax base?
Like I said again, can we
So you don't want any questions, basically?
really, no, not for this thing here. We're just checking on their progress. If you had something like a procedure or progress, I'm welcome to, if you want to talk about other things, I welcome you to come to their meeting.
Okay, so you want me not, you only want to hear from the people working on this project?
Because we haven't heard from them yet.
So you don't want any public
We-
input?
No, not right now.
Well, you just asked for public input.
Not the way you're asking right now, okay? I just want public input to what they stated as far as the direction, okay? Now, if you have other things, you can certainly say it at the public meetings, but we're not set up for debate right now and go over all the different things.
I'm raising issues.
And I've asked you to raise those issues at the public meeting for them. And they will have those. They'll have several public meetings with the town, okay? It's not going to be done in the dark, and so we should do it then, okay? All right. Are there anybody else that likes to talk about what they talked about? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and we're going to move on to our second agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your hard work. And Claire will probably set up a time where we can, would be good for us to set up that workshop meeting.
Yes, that'd be
We'll,
great.
we'll go over that, okay?
You're going to have public meetings before the workshop?
I don't know.
Can
It'll be
just,
posted on the Affordable Housing Overlay District and on the homepage as well. You can get to any meeting. So check the Affordable Housing Overlay District webpage from time to time.
The workshop meetings are also public. They're not, you can attend if you want, and they'll be posted. Okay?
Would it be all right if I made one comment?
Sure, please.
So I just wanted to address one thing that you had raised, which is that an overlay district does not, so this would be an overlay district. It would not mandate what gets built at this location. It would say if one chose to build affordable housing at this location, then certain things could be done. There would be certain things allowed under zoning. It does not, it wouldn't, but an overlay district does not say affordable housing is the only thing that can be built here.
So you're not actually approving those for development?
What is proposed,
He doesn't want
Yeah. So what is proposed is the committee is proposing these sites as a place where an overlay district might go, and the overlay district would functionally say, if one were to build affordable housing on any of the sites listed, any of the sites that were determined to be in the overlay district, then certain zoning relief would be permitted. But if one did not choose to build affordable housing there, that would be fine too. One could build something else that complied with the zoning that was already there, that was there previously.
And nothing gets approved until someone actually, makes an application.
That's right.
Thank you.
Can I just mention that for the proponents, I had made some notes about how I might adapt the MBTA communities language to expand it to address affordable housing, and I will send that to them in an email just in case that's of interest. And I know that a couple of the others on the board were interested in seeing a less duplicative.
Yeah, could you send it to Claire,
I'll send it to Claire and to
and
Cheryl.
she'll forward it on to them, okay?
Sure, yes,
I like things to go through Claire.
of course.
Is that okay?
That's fine with me.
All right. I'm going to move on to our second agenda item, the public hearing for docket 3883, 840, 846 Mass Ave, and 17 Newman Way. This is a site plan review hearing continued from February 2nd. Process. Claire, do you want to introduce the project?
Sure, I'm happy to. So this is an application by HCA 840 to 846 Mass Ave LLC. This application is for site plan review to construct a new 6-story building with 28 rental units deed restricted for households earning up to 60% of the area median income, and 1 commercial unit initially with about 2,300 square feet on the front lawn at 840 Mass Ave, and a new 3-story building with 12 rental units deed restricted for households earning up to 60% area median income at 17 Newman Way. The new units represent a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom designs. The plans also include long-term parking for 62 bicycles and short-term parking for 6 bicycles and 13 new vehicle parking spaces. The staff has provided a memo updating the board on issues and items that were raised in the previous public hearing. The board is in receipt of that memo, and the applicant has addressed all issues and items that were brought up in the previous meeting.
All right. Would the opponent like to?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Director Ricker. Mary Winstanley O'Connor. I represent the Housing Corporation of Arlington. With me is the Executive Director, Erica Schwartz, Andrew Wolford, who's a Senior Real Estate Project Manager, and Nick Burens from UTL Architects. As Director Ricker said, I think we provided you with a comprehensive response to all of the matters that you raised at the last meeting. I believe you also have my letter of February 25th that addresses a number of the legal issues relative to this matter, including the business services issue, the driveway, street trees, and the transportation demand management plan. We've also in that letter is the parking data that you requested for the other sites, Housing Corporation sites. I won't go through the letter if you have it, unless you have specific questions. I can turn it over to Mr. Burens, who can go through the updated plans if you'd like. Just tell us how you'd like to. But I do want to say one thing, and I understand this is only the second hearing, but there is some time constraints. If the board does not make a decision before the 19th of March, this will go another year. They will not be able to submit this project for this funding cycle with the state. So it'll be put off for another year. So I don't mean to put pressure, but they did ask me to report that to the redevelopment board.
Thank you. That's good.
So would you like, Mr. Burens, or do you have any questions for me on my correspondence to you?
None right now. Could you make your presentation, Mr. Buren?
Thank you so much. Nice to see everybody tonight. Nice to meet you, Vince. We just did a brief presentation, and similar to Mary, UTL provided a memo summarizing a lot of the design updates that were provided, so I hope that was a useful summary. I won't go through all of them right now, but we wanted to provide some updated visuals. If you go to the next slide, please. The site plan remained largely unchanged. We did add an accessible parking space, and if you go to the next slide, you can see a more detailed plan view of how that worked. So there was some rearrangement of the existing dumpster storage that exists on site, some consolidation of that, and then the addition of that accessible parking space. So that didn't change the overall total of parking spaces that were added. It's still 13, but we were able to provide that additional accessible space. Next slide, please. We did some work absorbing and studying and refining the architecture of Building 1 along the lines of a lot of the comments and discussion that we had at the last time. And just to sort of briefly summarize some of the main themes, there was some redesign of the ground floor storefront and commercial entry area to create a better sort of sense of energy and direction for that entrance. We started to suggest some window signage for that space on the ground floor, although, as I mentioned in our memo, that the design of the signage specifically would be subject to a subsequent permit. We're not suggesting anything in particular, but I know that was a question the last time we met. We also worked a little bit on the refinement of the step back and the cornice detailing. That was another issue that we raised, and tried to create some hierarchy between the two different roofline levels there. If you go to the next slide, please. We also wanted to provide a little bit more of a zoomed-in view and detail about some of the materiality and texture that we're proposing on the masonry detailing. It felt like maybe some of that nuance was lost in the sort of further away views that were shared originally. So just to summarize here, there's a idea about sort of different motifs of brick patterning and texturing that exist between the windows and in these window groupings, and with slightly different colors and tones of bricks that we think is really going to add a lot of visual interest and sort of dynamicism to the facade, and make it feel quite lively and sort of at a human scale. If you go to the next slide, please. There was also some feedback about the corner itself, and we did some studying, refinement of sort of the window placement around the corner, but also adding this idea of these reveals or recesses in the brick to really highlight the division between the different facade areas and the corner itself. And we thought that was a really subtle and elegant way to bring a little bit more refinement to the mass of the building overall. We're also suggesting some subtle color variation from top to bottom. We didn't propose an alternative material, but rather just a change in the brick color in the upper two stories to lighten up the top reading of that volume. Next slide, please. Just some very modest changes around the ground floor residential entry on Newman Way that were related mostly to plan updates that we made on the ground floor, which I'll summarize in a minute, but we did do some adjustment along some of the programmatic rearrangement that was suggested by the board. Next slide. And then just a minor update of the view of Building 2 here, where we were suggesting a slightly more accurate representation of the wood-style siding that exists in the entry, and sort of what the color and material palette of that will look like with the clapboard siding that's proposed on that building. Next slide, please. We provided some additional detail on the specific materials that are being proposed for the two buildings, so you can see some tentative selections here for the brick. Again, there's a sort of dark brick that exists on the base, sort of medium mixed brick that exists in the field, and then an accent brick around the windows. And that'll be paired with a precast concrete water table and wall panels around the commercial and ground floor residential entries. And then the interior siding at the courtyard is a product that we've used before, which is sort of a bio-based product made out of rice husks, actually, that mimics wood and is very durable and UV stable to get that wood effect and the sort of lighter cladding rigging that we're going for there. Next slide. And then a similar update here, just with some specific color selections and material suggestions for Building 2 as well. Next slide. And I know there was a bunch of discussion the last time we met about the definition of the non-residential space on the ground floor and the necessity to meet the 60% threshold for the setback relief under the zoning. We did some reworking of the ground floor plan that you can see here to meet that 60% threshold. And that was also combined with some rearranging of the program on the ground floor. I think Ken had made a suggestion about swapping laundry and bike parking. We've created a sort of side door for trash and bike access in the pathway between the new and existing building rather than directing that directly out onto Newman Way, which we think actually works quite a bit better for both internal and external circulation. So all positive improvements there. Next slide. I think that's all we have. So happy to answer any questions you might have about these materials or the other revised materials that were submitted.
Thank you very much. Why don't we start with Rachel here? You have any comments?
Sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate the detailed package and the memos which supported the changes. In the floor plan, A101A, what is in the room labeled common?
The intention is that it's sort of a flexible meeting room that would be part of the non-residential space. Yeah.
Okay. So our specific requirement in our zoning bylaw for the zero setback bonus is not non-residential, it's commercial. It's concerning to me that it is not labeled as commercial because I don't believe that there is any intent to meet the requirements of the bylaw for commercial uses. And I've seen the memo. We do actually define business services in our bylaws in section 5.5.3, business services. There is a list of business services in the use table, and office use is not a business use. So I'll go through some of my other comments, but ensuring that this is a commercial use to meet the 60% bonus provision for the zero setback. I don't believe that this is currently meeting it with the current program that is proposed and with the way that it is depicted in the plans. I also think that supporting that, there's no sign band, that was specifically identified that one wouldn't be provided. There's no way to sign this as a commercial property. There's no lighting at the entries that would, again, designate this as a commercial entrance to the building. So that's going to be my, currently is going to prohibit me from being able to approve this because I don't believe that it meets the bonus provision. Question about what is being proposed as non-residential. Do you meet 5.5.2B, which is a minimum of 60% transparency for ground floor commercial street frontage?
Sorry, you're asking, do we meet a...
Do you meet the 60% transparency requirement for
I believe we do, yes.
Okay, I wanted to confirm that.
If I could just add to, just a point about the
Sure.
nature of the plans. We left those spaces on there just for a comparison between what you had seen previously and what you're seeing now. It was not meant to suggest that there were going to be specific uses within the proposed plan, but they're more of a designation, of those zones, if that makes sense.
Your explanation makes sense. We have to approve this, and
yes.
what is attached to the special permit is very important because, it would be very challenging for the proponents. I think this is a fantastic project. This to me is the sticking point, and that mixed use bonus was specifically meant for mixed use, and if anything changes, and that you're right at 60%, if you don't provide commercial uses and you receive a special permit specifically around, providing commercial uses, you have a lot of residents who, this becomes a very big problem if your occupancy permit can't be granted because you didn't meet the special permit conditions. So it's something I'd really like for you to go back and take a look at. Just two small items. I think I just want to talk to the other board members. I believe you're showing a portion of solar being installed day one and solar ready for the other portion of your solar study. Could you just go through the solar study?
I don't think that was the intent. So we provided the updated solar
Yes.
study, and that was paired with what I would describe as sort of the zoning compliance analysis that was in our previous plan. So we identified, what areas of the roof we thought fell under the zoning requirements. And then we had a third-party consultant perform the actual solar analysis, and they provided the cut sheets and the,
Right.
the generation capacity that you saw. I
Sure.
don't believe there was an indication of day one versus future capacity, yeah.
So and I'll need to go back and pull the specific plan where it talks about solar ready capability on the roof, which seemed to be at a lower quantity of solar capability than the plan. So while my other board members are speaking to that, I will go back
Sure,
and
and
check.
maybe just to clarify that, there was a discrepancy between what we identified as being the areas that were applicable under zoning, and it's specific to building 2, where the north-facing portion of the roof was excluded. When we did do the actual analysis with the site-specific insulation and shading study, we found that roof area is actually viable, and so that generation capacity was added on as part of the solar study that was performed by resident. So that might be the discrepancy that you're talking about, but it was not meant to represent a sort of, day one plus an additional future
Sure.
generation capacity. It was just sort of highlighting that there were areas beyond those which were required by zoning that could be used successfully for solar energy generation.
Sure, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I understood that about building 2, the Newman Way property.
Okay.
What I'm specifically referring to, and I did find it, is A1-04A, where the majority of the roof is hatched as, or is identified as solar ready zone, as opposed to the area of, so are you including that as day 1? Or, again, I
Yes.
just want to understand
Yes,
nomenclature.
yeah,
That is
so-
not a
sorry.
day 2.
Yes.
Okay,
so-
perfect.
yeah.
Thank you. That clarifies. And the only other item I'll mention, and again, this is just a small item, in the courtyard, there's a lot of new impervious surface that's being added, and I appreciate the detail in the landscaping plan. I really do like the courtyard intent. I would just think about whether there is any other shading structure, because you don't have large canopy trees that you're proposing, that would be an amenity for your residents. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Rachel. Shana?
So, thank you for your thorough response, including the memos. I appreciate. Excuse me. I appreciated that. I've been skimming through the bylaw looking for the business services section, and I'm going to want to come back to that once I find it and read it more thoroughly, because that Rachel's read had not been my read, but I want to go back and look at it. I was largely satisfied, apart from that, with your updates. I wasn't certain that the measures in the TDM plan were actually fully in line with those in the bylaw. I did think that we we have the ability to accept other measures as appropriate, and I think that the list of measures you listed are appropriate, and so I am comfortable with what has been proposed, even if it's not fully in line with the exact list in the bylaw. One suggestion, I wouldn't necessarily make it a condition, but one suggestion is that with the residential entry on the side street, I would encourage you to put signage on the main street indicating where the residential entry actually is. And then my one last comment is that I would echo Rachel around some of the treatment of the commercial entry. I think some additional lighting and additional sort of context to further emphasize where the commercial entry is would be very valuable. But by and large, I really appreciate your efforts and updates, and I think this is a great project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vincent?
Thank you for bringing this back. So first of all, I should say that I was not a member of the board when you first came on February 2nd, but I've watched the video of your first hearing and I've reviewed all of the materials. Thank you for submitting them. Aesthetically, I have no concerns. I like it. There was a question about driveways, and somebody will probably correct me here, but I don't think section 6.1.10, I don't think it places any restriction on driveways for multifamily uses. So to me, it's a non-issue. But again, someone will probably correct me. I wanted to ask a little bit about the parking and transportation demand management plan, because I understand that you're proposing two measures that I can kind of squarely find them in the bylaw. And then you're proposing a few others that are not specifically in the bylaw. And I think I have no real concern about the amount of parking spaces you're providing, because you understand your population, but I would love to see, just to kind of have a clean conscience, I'd love to see a clear third TDM measure identified, and I was going to ask if cargo bicycle parking spaces could be found in the outdoor enclosure. Also, would you mind just describing to me the outdoor bike enclosure? Does it have a roof? Does it have walls?
It has a roof and a secure sort of metal screen type enclosure, yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, maybe an additional 1 or 2 cargo bicycle parking spaces. I also thought the number of electric bike charging stations could easily be increased, just to provide more options. Other than that, I think I'm comfortable with your parking proposal. I am curious, you've got a certain population now that has a certain number of cars, and I imagine the construction phase will kind of squeeze that. Do you have a plan to manage the transition between the current parking demand and the future parking space, and the inevitable fact that over that period of time it's going to be, do you have a plan to manage that?
During construction, the current parking lot behind 846 will not be impacted, like construction vehicles won't be allowed to park there. So I don't think construction will impact this new development coming. I think what will impact it is that over time, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So yes, for the people at home, yes, there will be no construction vehicles parking in the on-site parking during construction. We'll have to make another plan for that, so we're not taking spaces away from our tenants. But I think there will be a transition over time as far as the population of the existing buildings, where now not all of the units are restricted, and there are some higher income rents and higher income households. And over time, once we restrict the existing buildings to be 100% affordable, that population shift will result in slightly fewer cars. So that's the shift we're anticipating. But our construction period, we will have to make a plan for where construction vehicles go, but they shouldn't be going in our parking. Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to make a comment, and I guess I'm directing this at our acting transportation planner, Director Ricker, but it would be great to see if the town could coordinate and do some improvements in the public right-of-way at the same time. And the specific ones that I'm thinking of are adding some accessible parking spaces on the street, or some loading spaces on the street, or one person during public comment mentioned the narrowness of the sidewalk in front of that bus shelter. Could we expand that? So I'm just putting that out there as a comment for the town to know if there'd be a possibility of improvements to the public right away.
I think that's something we could certainly consider.
Find the money for it. Okay, and the bonus provisions. So I think I'm personally comfortable that we could approve the mixed use bonus. And I'd just like to go through my train of thought as to specifically what we'd be approving. I think the definition of business services, first of all, it's not defined in our bylaw. The bylaw does give some examples, but it's a vague term. I think would be entirely within the spirit of the MBTA Communities Act if we were to allow the uses that you're proposing. If you do look up business services online or look at the examples in the bylaw, you'll find things like copy shops, print shops, co-working spaces, call centers, which I have to imagine there's not a huge demand for those in Arlington, photo developing labs, likewise. And our bylaw mentions uses like banks, as if we didn't have enough banks along Mass Ave, funeral homes. So I think in a lot of ways, you're proposing things that are better than some of those examples. The key to me is that services is more than office space. Services, business services, would be something that's generating people walking in and out of the building. So I'm very comfortable approving this as long as we're very clear that there's a significant component of services to people outside of just your offices. And it wouldn't just be, one class every couple of months. This would be an ongoing part. And that's my understanding of what you're proposing, and I'd be comfortable with that. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, just a few questions. So the sheet A101A shows 44 long-term bicycle parking spaces on the interior. Where are the others? Because I could not find them on the plan.
Sure, they're in a small outdoor enclosure that is at the lower left-hand corner of the existing building, near the existing dumpster enclosure.
Okay.
And the new accessible parking space that we added.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But you do have 62.
Yes, we did. Yes.
All right. I share Mr. Bodoin's thought regarding the mixed-use bonus and business services. Regarding TDM, some of the measures are, not what's in our bylaw, but, we're not limited to what's in there. I thought that assisting residents in applying for reduced fare passes was novel, but I think very much in line with HCA's mission, and I would be very comfortable accepting that. And the offer for a bicycle repair station, I think that's also very useful and appreciated. Last question. So you're planning to use the Mass Ave Broadway rules for both buildings, is it correct?
Can you be more specific?
So the reason I'm asking is it looked like the ridge line of 17 Newman Way was 40.5 feet. In the neighborhood multifamily district, that would be 5.5 feet too tall, but it would be okay in the Mass Ave Broadway. So if you're doing both under the Mass Ave Broadway district, that would be fine.
Yes, that's
Okay.
always been our understanding, that since the consolidation of the parcels, they're all subject to the overlay district. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you for making the requested changes that we had stated earlier about adding a handicap parking space in the center of the parking field. Change around the laundry room and the bicycle, that was good. I want to ask you why you just felt that leaving the tall building with the same brick all the way up, your design reason for that. We had asked to see if you look at maybe breaking down the scale of the building down a little bit. I appreciate what you did with the cornice, where the cornice is not the same anymore, where the fourth floor cornice is a little more bolder, giving a little more definition to that level. But your choice of leaving the brick up top.
Sure, I'm happy to speak to it. I think generally speaking, we find that buildings are more cohesive architecturally and in their urban context with fewer materials rather than more. And I think we felt that there were a number of massing devices and fenestration devices that we were using here to mitigate the scale in a way that worked. And we do think that there's certainly a place to vary the type and the color of the masonry across the mass of the building to try to get some of that scale mitigation effect that I think you're alluding to, but generally felt that adding a whole new material to the composition would actually sort of bring more attention to the taller part of the building rather than make it recede.
Okay. Seeing that none of the board has brought that up, I'm assuming that's not an issue for the rest of the board besides my only issue. And if that is the case, I will let it rest and withdraw that request. Is that?
They did change the brick to a slightly lighter color of brick at the top, so it doesn't pop in the rendering, but I think there will be a subtle difference.
Yeah, I know that. It's just, it was very, but to me that was still very subtle. But I'm, like I said, if the rest of the board feels like that's not a big issue for them, I'm gonna let that one slide too and withdraw my concerns about that. Is everybody else okay with that?
Okay.
Rachel?
I can live with it as
Okay.
proposed.
Then I'll just withdraw my request on that. I, sort of, well, it's okay. I want to just ask Claire. We did ask town council for his interpretation of this, right? And we do have something back from our town council.
Yes, I did pose the question to town council, and he responded, in his opinion, the most reasonable interpretation is that the uses described in the application as proposed for the ground floor do constitute business services.
All right. I'm gonna think I would concur too on that. It's slightly vague, but I will concur with town council. Are there any other comments from the board? Seeing none, I'm going to open up for public comment. Does anybody want to make any comments on this project here, please? Sure. Can you come up and state your name and address and address the board, and we will address it at the end.
Yeah, Carol Band, 57 Bartlett Avenue. I think this is a good project. I'd like to see those top 2 stories defined maybe in a dark gray or a sort of a charcoal, really look different. And then I'm wondering about the building on Newman Way. Why is it so light? It just seems to be bright white. Yeah, there it is. I think it would be richer and blend in better with the neighborhood if it was a color. I'm thinking if it was like a dark gray, it could match the 2 upper stories on the building on Mass Ave. And that could tie them together. Just a thought.
Thank you. Sure, go ahead.
I'm Amy Duke. I live at 33 Newman Way, which is 2 houses down from 17 Newman Way. Just 2 comments at this point. We had asked for a meeting with the HCA, which happened 2 weeks ago. are two sort of big concerns that we think maybe could still be changed. One was concerned about parking, particularly that transition period. So, when I hear that there isn't plans yet for how the construction vehicles will, be incorporated, or are they going to be on the street for 2 years? Anyway, we would really like to kind of know what that plan is. The other thing that, the people that will look at 17 Newman Way don't like it. And I realize that aesthetics is personal. I think in the future, by this point, people have paid money and the designs are done. I did ask whether, maybe you need to have this kind of building to get the funding or something. But I didn't really feel like I got a straight answer for that. So this may not be the place. But in the future, I think there should be meetings with neighbors before the design is already set in stone and sort of presented as a fait accompli. But in any case, one neighbor who does have some background in design, and we talked with the HCA about this, I don't know that they're that hard. I think Nick seemed to say that they weren't that hard. I just don't see them now. But changing the yellow to like a rust color to kind of blend more with the brick next door, and then adding lintels, again, to reflect the 840 Mass Ave. We just thought that would be more continuity.
Thank you. You, sir?
Hi. Good evening. Alex Bagnall, over on Wyman Street. So when we were engaged in the deep debate about the MBTA Community Act, it was often a criticism levied at it that it was not about affordable housing. So as a town meeting member who voted for this, I am delighted that one of the first big projects is actually about 100% affordable housing. The old legal maxim of justice delayed is justice denied, I think can be quite evident here. And that a 1-year delay for those 28 rental units is a very real cost to delaying this project further. The town has spent the better part of 50 years preventing multifamily housing from being built, and I think it should perhaps lean a little more on the side of getting it built at this point. To that end, I would urge the board to find a way to approve the project, perhaps with some conditions that Claire can deal with administratively, rather than casting the project down another year and having it delayed for those 28 people. Finally, parenthetically, I would note that I do live on a street with multifamily housing. We also throw a block party, and it is delightful to have a whole bunch of people at that block party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure, go ahead.
Once again, Lori Champagne, 40 Hopkins Road. I too live on a street with multifamily housing, and we have very good esprit de corps. We also have a WhatsApp that's street-wide. I actually think this should be, I would invite the board to delay this for as long as they need to make a good decision on this. And one of the things the resident of Newman Street brought up, which I think is something that should be considered in all affordable housing and building projects going forward, is the extent to which the architecture does fit in to the town of Arlington. We've had bad development in the past, well before all of our times, and I don't think we as a community or you as a board should continue that legacy. And so I think, sort of referencing what the woman from Newman said about her neighbors, we all have to look at it, and the people in Newman Street are most affected by it. And I think that building in particular, I can't understand how the community of Arlington, a colonial community, as I said, with its history of bad development, how this design is remotely informed by the community it's built in, as well as the larger building on Mass Ave. This could be placed from the designs in any community in anywhere USA. And I think if we're going to go forward, which we are and which we need to do, with affordable housing and development in this town, some thought has to be given to the look and feel of the town for not only the community at large, but for the people moving in to these buildings. So I would invite you to take all the time you need and to think of it more in terms of what this architecture brings to the town overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir? Bless you.
Hi, I'm Ken Garden, and I live at 8 Windsor Street in East Arlington, so across Mass Ave from the Arlington Diner. I'm a member of the board and have been for 3 years, and I've also been on the real estate committee of HCA for about 5 years. And what I've seen there is, first of all, just what a need there is for affordable housing in Arlington, and then, of course, throughout the Boston area, and also how difficult it is to find areas to develop. So I think one of the board members mentioned that for a development to be viable, there have to be about 30 units. Thankfully, tomorrow we'll be breaking ground on a new building, but it is on Sunnyside Avenue, the last side street off of Broadway. In an area where there was mostly, sort of auto body shops and that sort of thing. It's rare that a parcel large enough for development comes up, and it's rare also that one comes up that we can actually, bid on, competitively against developers who want to build, luxury apartments and that sort of thing. And so all that just to say that what a remarkable opportunity this is to develop something that is right in Arlington Center, right on the 77. So many of our residents don't have cars and are reliant on public transportation. So this is crucial for them. It's close to all of the other amenities that downtown Arlington has to offer. The grocery stores there, the high school, the pharmacy, the post office, and all the rest of the shops there. These will be much needed units, and really in a great location. And an opportunity like this will probably not come again. So I just urge you to approve the project. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Mary?
May I just say a few more words about the business service issue? Or do you have enough on that?
Let's table that for now till when the board comes back to talk about that, because we will be discussing that amongst ourselves, and I think your input at that time would be great. Is there any more public comment on this project here? Seeing none, I close public comment and return the comments back to the board. I think now is a good time, Mary. We will talk about parking and everything else. You can sit down there, but let's wait till I'll bring up a consensus here. Are there any additional comments from the board? Rachel?
Do we have a sample board? That is one item that we require, and I am, the renderings certainly don't show a differentiation in the brick coloration. I know that there is some on some, I know how little you can take rendering coloration. So I think that ensuring that we do have a differentiator as, again, Vince also mentioned between the 2 upper stories and the lower stories in brick would be helpful. I would be, still have an issue with the commercial use, so I won't be in support of this, but I think a condition that the board could make to require a sample board if you decide to move forward with a vote, so that the board can review that administratively would be worthwhile.
Thank you. Shana?
So, skimming through, reading through the bylaws, we proceeded. And hearing town council's input, I am comfortable with the commercial use. I think my only other piece was a little bit more accentuation at the commercial space, which I think could probably be done as a condition. I do appreciate the urgency of getting approved before the 19th, and And so I would like to see something get done, if not tonight, very quickly. Out of consideration for that, I think this project is very close.
Vince?
Only to say that I think the rest of the board was fairly supportive of the TDM plan, and so I would just frame my suggestion for cargo bike parking or more electric bike charging stations as a suggestion, and unless others on the board disagree. Other than that, no more from me.
Steve?
I have it's a personal curious question about 17 Newman Way. Was that inspired at all by the UU Church at the corner of Pleasant Street and Mass Ave? It has a very similar, the roof lines just give me a similar vibe.
It's coincidence. No, it was not.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's coincidence. Nothing.
You wouldn't remember it either, would you? He didn't even know.
It's also a light, very light color.
At any rate, I don't have anything to add that I think that hasn't been said. I'm also comfortable with the commercial use in the TDM program. Thank you.
Can I just
Vince?
to come back to the sample board question? I personally have no issue with the materials. I would be willing to suggest that we could designate Ms. Zimbury or someone on the board to just in person to review a board once it's prepared, or they can bring it back before the full 5 of us. Either way.
If it's just a materials board, I don't want that materials board to hold up approval of this project, okay? So I would be fine if the rest of the board would be fine if they brought back a materials board for the planning board, and anybody on the board can come and visit that. And we put under a special condition that maybe if anybody on the board has any major issues with the color of the top 2 floors, then would you guys be willing to relook at that if we do have an issue with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're more than happy if you want to bring a materials board in. If you want to make it as a condition, we'll come back to the board for you to review those.
It doesn't have to be the whole board. I want just, if people want to look at it, they can come and look at it, and if there's big issues, then we can say, hey, there is issues here, and you guys are willing to make changes to that if there's an issue, right?
Absolutely. That's
Okay, so I'm not trying to, work that, if the rest of the board's okay with that suggestion?
It is. Can I just address, I think one of the neighbors who had a question about the potentially looking at the 2 upper stories as a dark gray, and I think you had as well. I just wanted to say that normally I would agree, and I think that normally I would say yes, accentuating that would be something that I would take a look at if that was a full volume that was articulated on all, that could be clearly defined more than just on the
2 facades, yep.
2 facades. I think that when I look at the overall architecture of the building, including the courtyard side with the vertical, I believe it's a simulated wood product. That allows me to feel more comfortable with the brick over brick design. I think taking the building in totality is important. So I just wanted to state that to specifically respond to one of the items of public comment.
Thank you. So it sounds like we do have a quorum for this. And would somebody like to make a motion?
Can I make a couple of suggestions
Sure.
related to Shayna's request for special conditions?
Yes, I was hoping the
before a
motion.
motion is
Okay.
made. So I think we both identified that taking another look at the signage and lighting at the commercial entry is something that's important. And I have a question for those who believe that the proposed use meets the requirement or meets the requirements of business services. I believe at least one member asked the applicant to confirm that these services would be not just for the residents, but open to the public. And my question for the board is whether a condition on the, again, if it's, I think even it was posed, if it's one class per week that's open to the public, that really doesn't meet the mixed use bonus provision, both intent and wording of this being an active public use. So would the board want to put any special conditions on the approval of the special permit regarding the public access to the extent of public access to the proposed business services?
Can I frame this as a question, first of all, to the applicants? Would a condition to the effect that a substantial portion of the activities in the non-residential space would be open to people who might not be residents of the projects, would that be a constraint that would prevent you from doing what you're trying to do? I don't think we can quantify it, but just a way of saying a substantial portion of the activity would be people coming in from outside.
I think that's fair to say, either members of the Arlington public at large or tenants at other HCA properties. All of our programs, except for our tenant council, are open to members of the public at large. And our tenant council is open to all HCA tenants who come from all of our other properties and might come to the building for meetings or events or things like that.
Or services.
Or services.
Primarily services.
Yeah.
I'd be very comfortable with a condition like that.
How are you going to phrase that?
Someone with more legal knowledge should rephrase this, but that a substantial portion of the activities in the non-residential space would be open to people not necessarily residents of the property.
So services are not limited only to the residents of the property.
Exactly.
Does that sound better?
Substantial portion of the activities and programming.
Okay. And also, can you just resubmit the ground floor plan with the word, with that meeting room taken out?
Relabel, do you mean relabel community room like meeting room or something of that sort?
Just make it part of that office space,
Just
because you don't show anything there.
unlabel it?
Just take the unlabel that and
Remove
take the
the
wall out too, because you don't show any walls for anything else right there. Just that'll be part of the fit out, so it actually looks like part of that.
Well, you have to remember, there has to be some private space because some people are gonna get social services.
No, there'll still be private space, but it's
None of that scope is currently in the agreement. It doesn't need to be.
you're not showing any of the offices. You're not showing anything else. So just show it as it's just.
It's not that it can't be built that way, it's that
It makes it clear exactly what the intent was, and I want to make sure we are following the intent is that you make 60% based on that. So just resubmit that one, whatever drawing there is, so we're not having any follow through saying, hey, you showed it this way and then something else happened here. Okay. Sorry. Was someone else finishing up with what were the special conditions here? Besides that, was that it?
We also have a typical special condition of ensuring that there are no vertical wall penetrations for mechanical or other exhaust venting. And I believe you had that in your memo, but again, we would include that as a special
We did, yes,
condition.
exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
And we also have the snow removal and all the rest of the stuff that
Yeah,
normally
but
goes.
that's not in our typical, we have to add that as a special. We can
Okay.
add it in our
No,
more,
no.
we don't currently have it in our standard
That's fine.
special conditions.
is one of our standard that signage would have to be appropriate, I think that is one of our typical, any signage would have to be appropriately permitted, so.
Are there any other conditions the board like to add? Okay. Steve,
May I make a motion?
please.
All right, so I move that the board approve docket number 3883 with the following list of conditions. That a sample board be provided to the Department of Planning and Community Development for administrative approval. For the applicant to take a look at signage and lighting around the commercial entry. That a substantial portion of the activities in the non-residential space be open to community members who are not residents of the property. That the applicant resubmit their drawings removing the community room from the ground floor of Building 1. That all venting be through the roof, and that signage, a sign permit will be required before signage is installed.
Second?
I know Vince discussed the TDM plan about the suggestion. Is that something that we wanted to?
We should include that as a finding, yes.
Yes, let's include TDM that Vince brought up.
No, it wasn't the addition of the cargo bikes. It was that the board has made a finding that the alternate provisions as proposed by the applicant meet the requirements of the transportation demand management section of the bylaw.
Do you add that?
Correct. That's correct.
Steve?
Yes, and in addition, I motion that the board find that the transportation demand management measures offered by the applicant meet the criteria of the bylaw.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Rachel?
No, and not because this isn't a great project, but because it doesn't meet the requirements of the mixed-use bonus provision that was specifically set out in the multifamily overlay district.
Thank you. Shanna?
Yes.
Vince?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I'm a yes myself too. So it's a vote of 4-1. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for
Thank
all
you.
of your work
Does
on it.
this mean you're not taking into account anything from the resident of Newburn or Newman and myself? So you're not taking any of that into account?
We listened to you, we heard you,
So
and
you're not taking any of it into account?
so we listened to you, we heard you, and we made an opinion. We heard and we made our opinion there.
Okay, well, thanks for not listening then. All right, guys, are you the final authority?
Yes,
No.
we are.
No, if you want to do something about it, you can.
If you could follow up with Claire, we're still in an active meeting. If you could follow up with Director Ricker afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
If people are leaving, can you, please leave quickly and quietly because we still have a rest of the meeting to fulfill. Thank you. Okay, third on our agenda is public hearing for warrant articles for 2026 town meeting continued from March 2nd. The board has a chance to review the memos from DPCH with background information and the main motion language. We will discuss these one by one and voting on these on March 30th, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So the first one up is Article 42, Parking and Loading Standards. Claire, do you want to have a comment on this?
Sure, I can provide some background. This is Article 42. It is a proposal to reduce the minimum drive aisle requirement from 24 to 22 feet. At their meeting on January 12, 2026, the ARB members reviewed the drive aisle width bylaws of neighboring communities, and the overall width varied between 20 and 24 feet. This warrant article submission was a result of a discussion by members of the ARB on December 12th.
Are there any comments from the board? Starting with Steve?
Well, still wish we could go down to 20, but I think 22 is an improvement over 24. And, just to reiterate why we're doing this, one of the tensions that we run into frequently is the ground floor of mixed-use buildings. And there's a trade-off between, there's often a trade-off between area used for parking and area used for the actual commercial space, and we're widening or narrowing the drive aisle a little bit in order to allow a little more commercial space on the ground floor. Thank you.
Good. Vince?
I agree with Steve. This is fine with me, the proposal. I would consider that 20 feet would be an interesting hard minimum because that's dovetails with the typical fire lane dimension, but we're at 22 at the moment. That's the proposal, and I'd support it.
Shayna?
I agree with Steve and Vince. I think 22 is fine and sensible.
Rachel?
I have no problem with the actual wording. What I just wanted to identify were a couple of things that I think would be helpful in the background section when this does go in the ARB report. We mention reviewing the drive aisle with bylaws of neighboring communities. I think it has often been helpful for town meeting members to understand what those are. So I think if we can highlight a few of the standards that we look at, that would be very helpful to town meeting members. And I think, Steve, you highlighted again what some of the genesis for this, the background for why we are looking at this. I think that that's very important to include in the background, so that town meeting members have a better understanding as to why we think that this is necessary.
Okay. I personally think 22 is appropriate because 20 feet, I can't turn my truck around in 20 feet. I'm sorry. So a little self-interest here. But, okay, seeing no other comments from the board, I'm going to open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this, please? I'm going to be looking at you most of the night because seeing no public comment, I'm going to close public comment and we'll move on to Article 43, marquee signage. Claire, do you want to introduce this?
Sure, absolutely. I'd like to ask Katie Lusai, who's the Economic Development Coordinator and the drafter of this article, to come up and introduce. I can give you a little background. The purpose is to modify the standards for marquee signs in the zoning bylaw to permit digital components. Since the town's sign bylaws were last revised in 2015, digital marquee technology has advanced to offer programmable LED signs that can be integrated appropriately into historic marquee facades. This modification would be explicitly allowed for marquee signs only and would require applicants to obtain a special permit through the Redevelopment Board. Thank you, Katie.
Katie, you want to add anything to this?
That summarizes it.
Okay. Does the board have any comment on this, starting with Steve?
Yes, in the introduction to the sort of the background paragraph on Article 43, the memo says something to the effect of, since the town's sign bylaws were last revised in 2015, that date is not correct. The sign law as it exists was substantially adopted in 2019 as Article 17 for the 2019 town meeting. And basically at that point in time, we were rewriting the bylaw in response to the Supreme Court's ruling in Reed versus Gilbert. Other than that, I think Article 43 seems fine to me.
Thank you, Steve. Vince?
I have no issues with Article 43.
Shayna?
I have no issues with 43 either.
Rachel?
I have a few things that I'd like to add to this. There are digital signs which are unoffensive, and there are digital signs that are offensive. And I think that we want to make sure that we provide some provisions here that I think would be helpful. And Okay, most of this has to do with the brightness, I think. I think that that's something that we should weigh in on. I think that automatic dimming sensors are something that we should require for electronic display, such that obviously the illumination that you require when you're competing against the sunlight versus in the evening should be different, so that we're not blasting, for example, Town Tavern or some of the other neighbors with light. I think that we should discuss whether the digital sign should be turned off or dimmed after closing hours. I also want to ensure that the digital display is integrated into the architectural framing or canopy of the, I'm assuming that this is really just for theaters. So that's another item. Let me just read here. I think, a question of do we want to just limit this to theaters is something that we look at, because I would hate for it to be interpreted in a different way. But I do think that it needs to be integrated into a traditional marquee sign design and does not replace, that it's not just a digital board, but that it is architecturally framed. And I have to say, it's interesting. Katie, do you know of other jurisdictions other than, I know that some of the theaters in Boston, for example, on Stewart Street, recently approved digital? I couldn't find any other communities that did, and that's just of a concern to me.
Nothing specifically. So the best example I saw of historically appropriate electronic marquee was the Cabot Theater in Beverly, but they did not specifically call out anything in their bylaws. I also could not find anything satisfactory.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for doing that research. And I wonder if, so we have a special permit requirement.
Correct.
Again, I'm just I'm concerned about dimming and brightness. I'm concerned about ensuring that the digital board is integrated into the architectural framing of the marquee design. And I'd like to make sure that this is specific for theaters and, whether we include theaters. We don't really have any other performing arts facilities here, but I wanted to make those suggestions to the board for discussion.
Can I thought this was just to allow digital signs, and the sign itself, being digital, would still have to be reviewed by us, the board. So the appropriateness of dimming and not dimming, its border, how it fits in with, we still review that. So we don't give up that jurisdiction. It's just allowing digital signs. That's a question, not a statement.
That is the intention.
Okay.
So the intention is to, as you're saying, discuss all of those features pertaining to dimming, how it's framed, how it fits really into the whole facade. Also wanting to note that both of these theaters are historic. They're both more than 100 years old, so would have that additional layer of jurisdiction. But yes, the intention is to work out any of those details in the special permit process. I'll say that I did discuss this with the Regent Theater, and they did bring up any potential restrictions with the animation. So I'm sure what would be discussed at the special permit process is how frequently any features change. But I from this point in time would see that more of
a thorough discussion when a special permit application is brought before the board.
Does that make you feel better, Rachel?
No, I think that automatic dimming sensors should, and including the digital, making it clear that the digital display must be integrated into the architectural framing of the marquee sign are important to call out.
Okay. How's the rest of the board feel on that? Is there concurrence or no?
I mean, to me, it states that it's allowed, oh, no, okay. Allowed only as an integral part of a marquee sign as part of the section for changeable copy signs, and then for the section that reads electronic display, it's not listed, so I guess I don't, I think a lot of this could be covered in the special permit hearing. I'm not sure what, you know, that last sentence where it describes some of the things that are prohibited, you could add a few conditions describing appropriate brightness and what other things might be discussed as part of the special permit. I wish I had something more constructive to add.
That's all right. Steve?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to additional standards, but we'd have to write them, and I'd have to. I can't guess what they'd look like, but.
Well, I think what Vince just identified, where under changeable copy, identify is allowed only as an integral part of the marquee sign. Changeable copy is different from electronic display. So if we were to use that language, that could be an area to start. And I'm happy to provide my markups. I was traveling last week, so I only was able to review this weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to provide, to take a pass at that and then circulate it.
Can I add one more thing to it? That this digital sign would have to be reviewed by the board, not administratively.
I think it identifies that a special permit is required, which requires that it comes to the.
But didn't we make some signage saying that it could be handled administratively? So I want to change it back, or not change it, but just make it clear that this has to be done not by administrative approval.
My understanding was that, there are standards in the sign bylaw. If you stick to the standards, you could be administratively approved. If you want to exceed the standards, you have to go for a special permit. Here, this is saying special permit, and I mean, there's state law. State law defines what a special permit is.
Okay.
Our bylaw
as long as it comes up in front of us, I'm set. And if you guys feel that's covered that way, I'm set. Okay. Any more additional comments? Okay.
I would just note that we do have requirements around sign illumination in the bylaw already, and so let's take a look at that and see if there's any appropriate guidance there. There's already wording around signs not being illuminated during certain hours and things like that. To the extent that we can standardize, that's, I think, preferable.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for public comment. Seeing none, I close public comment. We can move on to Article 45, portable and temporary signs. You can stay there, Katie.
Fully expecting to needing to leave.
Claire, do you want to introduce this? Or you want
Sure.
Katie to? Either way.
Let's have Ms. Lusai respond. That would be great.
Sure. Katie?
Sure. So for the background on this, the purpose is really to modify the standards for the portable and temporary signs portion of the bylaw to provide greater limits to their usage. Currently, the bylaw doesn't limit the number of portable signs that a business could use. We mostly frequently see this in the form of A-frames on our sidewalks. So to provide ample sidewalk space and also public placemaking, such as installing benches, planters, etc., this modification proposes limiting a business to utilize a maximum number of A-frames or upright signs at a certain time, and also decreasing the amount of days. At the current time frame is 60 days that a business can use portable or temporary signs, but to really decrease that to a total of 30 days per calendar year. Also, this modification additionally proposes lowering the total days allowed to display temporary signs. We mostly see this as temporary wall banners from 60 to 30 days. As we've seen challenges with many businesses and organizations keeping up their temporary signs for much longer than even 60 days. So yes, I welcome all comments.
Thank you. Rachel, do you have a comment on this?
A question. So, Katie, when you drafted this, was the intent, there seems to be a conflict between the allowable sign types and the number of signs, is that we only call out the number of signs for A-frame and temporary wall banner, but there are more types of temporary signs than that listed. So is the intent that those would be unrestricted within the maximum 24 square feet, but that the A-frame and the temporary wall banners would be restricted to one each? What was the I didn't want to propose something without asking you what the intent was.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. The intention, and I hope I'm answering this question correctly, is to allow a business to use both a temporary A-frame, one, or upright sign, or a maximum of one temporary wall banner for a maximum of 30 days. But also taking in, so if this proposal were to come to me, I would look at it holistically and also take into account the maximum 20 square feet of total signage, both temporary and permanent, for a business. I hope that answers your question.
It answers my question as to the intent. So you would look at, again, if they came to you with an A-frame, and let's say the total square footage was 18 square feet, would you consider then that they still had 6 square feet that they could use for an additional window sign?
Yes, that is generally how I would interpret it.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think that
with the typical window sign caveats that it still can't, obscure a certain percentage of the window, etc.
Great. I think then that the number of signs section needs to be worded slightly differently, because I think that the way that this is written, it looks like it's a bit in conflict, and so I think perhaps if it's unlimited with the exception of a maximum of one A-frame or upright sign and maximum of one temporary wall banner per business, the total area of which must not exceed 24 square feet. I think, again, I'm happy to propose alternate language there. That to me was the wording of that. I think I wanted to take a look at. And then while we're looking at this, my question for the board would be, do we feel that a restriction on the number of window signs is something that we would want to add to this as well? And I'm specifically thinking about all the challenges we have with the liquor stores and others who have 40 temporary window signs that just never seem to come
Sure.
down. And I would like to give Katie and others more teeth to be able to enforce some of the common issues that we see in town.
Sure, and I will note that during this most recent annual license renewal, we did send, through the select board, through my office and inspectional services, violation warning letters to many, not all, but many, of the liquor stores and other establishments that occupy much of their window space. And for that, I typically just cite the window sign portion of the sign bylaw.
Okay, so I guess my question is, do you feel that you have enough already included in the bylaw to be able to make that argument?
I do.
Specifically with regard to window signs.
Yes, specifically in regards to window signs, I do. But, if there's additional language that would make, you feel more comfortable, for the future, I completely welcome it.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all I had.
Shana?
So the clarification around number of signs and square footage, that's great. I did wonder whether 30 days was the right number of days, whether 60 days was the right number. I don't have strong feelings about that, but, I would ask my fellow board members their thoughts about that. I think 30 days in a calendar year may be short, but I don't have strong feelings. That's all I've got.
Vince?
Thank you. I know I'm new coming into this partway through a process, but I'm mostly not in support of Article 45. I think that the restriction on sign quantities I could potentially be okay with if there's a real problem. The warrant article text only talks about limiting the quantity of signs. It doesn't talk about the time restrictions, so that's a bit nitpicky, but I wonder if there's like a scope issue. But my real problem is the 30-day restriction on the A-frame signs. To me, those signs have two main purposes. Like the first purpose is to show passersby that the business is open. And the second purpose would be to give some like up-to-date information about what's on the menu, or if it's a dance studio, if there's a performance happening, or if it's an arts and crafts spot, then what kind of classes are on offer that day. And to me, those purposes are valid 300 days a year or more anytime the business is open. And so I wouldn't support reducing the number of days that those could be displayed. So, if it's important to restrict the number of signs, and if we want to eliminate the time restriction and just keep the, so let me say what I'm specifically suggesting. I would want to eliminate the time restriction for A-frame signs, or eliminate the change at least. We would just keep it at 60 days.
Vince, that would be 6.2.6A2.
Right. I would keep. Yep. I would eliminate that change. We could keep the time restriction that you're proposing for wall banners, but leave it at 60 days. I think that a wall banner is a bit different, and that it's in a way it's more temporary. The sign that you put out on the street, I would expect that to be changing, but I could see that being out there for as many days as the business feels like it's appropriate. Is there a restriction that the A-frame or temporary signs only be out when the business is open? Is that? I do think we say that they can't like clutter up the public right of way.
Correct, but no, there isn't anything that specifically cites that.
Just a question. My first instinct is to not support the article, but I could be convinced to support it with just the restriction on the number of signs, but not with the change on the time for the A-frame signs and the upright signs. Thank you.
Steve?
I concur with Mr. Baudoin regarding the A-frame signs. I do think they serve a valid purpose, and they tend to be put out when a business opens and taken in when it closes. And it seems like it would be extraordinarily difficult to count the number of times that a business put an A-frame sign out, whereas a wall banner, it's put up and left, and I think that's much easier to enforce. I don't have a strong feeling about 30 days versus 60 days. I don't know, Katie, if you can share some thoughts on why that change was recommended.
Sure. Yes, I'll note that the decrease of days is primarily targeted at temporary wall signs, wall banners. Decreasing the number of days from 60 days to 30 days adds more pressure, a greater sense of urgency for businesses to work towards getting permanent signs.
I see.
Yes, that is really the intention. So I've taken all of your comments about the days, and especially with the A-frames. I do agree.
No, I'm okay with the length of time restriction because it is, temporary sign. The idea is to encourage the business owner to move along and get a permanent one. I'm fine with that.
All right, I'm gonna open this to public comment right now. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we're gonna close public comment and come back to what's the recommendation or consensus from the board for these changes? Because I'm hearing all different things. So can we just have an agreement on, or maybe a disagreement on, but how we want things? I'm assuming, does everybody feel like bringing it back to originally 60 days for the A-frames is agreeable or not agreeable?
I think the proposal, which I'm in agreement with, is to eliminate the modification to 6.2.6A2, which is what would limit it for the A-frame, and to only keep in what's already existing under wall banner, but to support the change from 60 to 30 calendar days for the wall banner.
Okay, is there any objections to that?
That works for me. Yep.
Steve?
Works for me too.
Shannon?
Yep, works for me.
I'm assuming Rachel?
That works for me.
Okay. Will you make that change, Katie?
Yes, thank you.
Thank
you all.
And then, sorry, the other change was to change the wording under the number of signs, as we discussed, so that it's unlimited, except for a maximum of one A-frame or upright sign and a maximum of one temporary wall banner sign per business. The total sign area must not, in the separate sentence, the total sign area must not exceed 24 square feet per business, which still accomplishes, Katie, your intent behind this, where we have a plethora at some businesses of upright and A-frame signage, which is now blocking the sidewalk, and additional wall banners. So
Yes, great, thank
Great.
you.
So what you're proposing, Rachel, just so I'm clear, is that we keep that proposed change?
under number of signs, yes, but make it clearer so that right now, the way that it's written, it does not appear that yard signs and window signs are allowed under that section number of signs. So you would just include that basically those are unlimited. What you're limiting are the A-frame and upright sign and temporary wall banner signs per business, but that the total, you're still then referring back to the total sign area, which is the area above, so that they can use a combination of temporary signage.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me on this sign permit review journey.
Okay. We'll close discussion of that. Move on to, thank you, Katie. You're good.
For now?
Nope, you're good.
You're good.
No,
You got animal daycare.
Oh, that's you?
I'm getting deja vu.
Yeah,
Never mind.
have a seat.
Okay.
I had already skipped to 44, but never mind. Article 46, animal daycare use. Katie?
Thank you. The purpose of this article is to both add the definition of animal daycare to the zoning bylaw and also expand its use to parcels within business district zoning. Over the last several years, we have had multiple dog daycare centers who've approached our office looking to bring their businesses here to Arlington. However, Arlington, under our current zoning bylaw, an animal daycare is only allowed in areas zoned for industrial purposes. We only have here in town 154 parcels that are zoned for industrial. However, taking a closer look at how many buildings, how many structures we have within the industrial zone districts, only 50 are currently used for commercial or industrial purposes. Those spaces could be created, but as you are all aware, it's very challenging to either transform a residential space to commercial or industrial purposes or too cost prohibitive for businesses. The town presently has 3 animal daycare businesses. It is important to note that these businesses will still be required to comply with all other local and state regulations as outlined in Mass General Law, which also includes Ollie's Law, which is a newer law, and our town bylaws. The goal of this article is really to lower the barrier to entry for these businesses and expand economic opportunity. By allowing animal daycare by special permit in most of our business districts, and I also propose to allow it by right in our B4 vehicle-oriented business district. This is due to the existing uses of many of the structures in B4. Many of these parcels are also located near industrial zoned parcels, and that is my summary.
Thank you. We'll start with Steve.
I initially had a question on why B4 by right, and the memo explained, and I'm happy with that. I think this is fine.
Vince?
Yeah, no concerns. Thank you.
Shayna?
I'm fine with this.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with this. I originally had a question as to whether or not B3 and B5 were appropriate places for this. I agree, B4 is ideal for this this type of use, as are some of the B2A sites. My question was whether animal daycare in our densest business district was something we wanted to include, but again, I think it's by special permit, so that I just wanted to talk through my process with the board. That's it.
I very much appreciate that. I'll note that Play and Pup is located in one of our densest commercial areas. So it is doable. Also, keep in mind that not every commercial landlord is going to want an animal daycare. So there's always those additional barriers to entry as well.
I do have a question. I'm not, maybe this is, just because I didn't read carefully enough, but when you say daycare, is that like grooming or boarding? Or both?
It is daycare use. So overnight boarding is not allowed. Also, and I really hope I'm not misquoting, but under Ollie's Law, all dogs need to be brought to residences to be boarded overnight. So there's many restrictions that come into play once you propose boarding overnight. But dogs cannot be boarded overnight at those facilities.
Okay.
But please fact check me on that.
I don't know. I mean,
Well, it's clear in overnight boarding of animals
yes,
is prohibited.
Is prohibited.
Okay. And we don't wish to board, have areas to board, or something that's something separate, then we'll talk about this next year.
We as a town, could you be more specific?
Yes, we as a town. I just don't, if I lived here and I'm going to go on vacation, where am I going to board my dog for a week?
So great question. Looking at the zoning bylaw and what is outlined in other communities, so this definition was taken largely from the town of Wellesley, but it's pretty similar across other communities for animal daycare definitions. I think it would be a better opportunity to look at allowing commercial kennels is the use definition for overnight care, whether you have your own dogs or are boarding others combined. Under the home occupation zoning. So I believe there's a citizen petition looking at the home occupation. I would encourage looking at that use.
I see. I don't see having a home occupation for dog hotels, just because.
I think what I'll say to that, and I apologize for interrupting, is there's many, independent contractors who are using services such as Rover to do overnight dog boarding. In order for your individuals to have that kind of business, they have to get a business certificate, and if they would like to set it up as their own, side gig, if you will, to set up an LLC and establish that business in their home, that's when we typically have the town clerk who stops and says, you're not actually allowed to have any overnight boarding of animals. So that's why this discussion has been brought up for both daycare and also on the home occupation side.
I mean, I don't see 1 or 2 dogs being an issue, but like a dozen or 2 dozen dogs.
No, definitely
barking,
not. But in order for individuals to create their own business, that is just the checks and balances that we need to go through on the town side.
Thank you. I'm going to open this up for public comment. Seeing there's no public comment, I'm going to close the public comment. And now we're on to Article 44. David, do you mind stepping up? Thank you. Article 44 is the floodplain district. Do you want to introduce this, David?
Sure. The purpose of the proposed change to the bylaw is to bring the existing language into conformance with the Massachusetts floodplain model bylaw. This is a requirement for Arlington as a participating community in the National Flood Insurance Program, and it's just requisite for our maintained participation.
Steve?
Sure. In terms of may I ask, make some suggestions and questions?
Please.
Okay. First, a disclosure, because I own a property in a floodplain district. I have filed an ethics disclosure form with my appointing authority, letting them know that I feel I can participate in this in a fair and impartial manner. Having said that, onto some nitty gritty. So I have 9 comments. Sorry, but I'll just go through them down. So in the definition of floodplain district and special flood hazard area, we peg the we basically define the district in terms of flood insurance rate maps and flood insurance studies that were conducted on a specific date, July 8th, 2025. In the spirit of preventing them from those definitions from becoming stale, would it be possible to say, simply say something to the effect of the most recent Middlesex County flood insurance rate maps and, flood insurance studies?
I believe that FEMA's preference is that we maintain this language because they like to revisit municipalities' bylaws or ordinances periodically. And this is sort of the hook that they set so that there is a timetable for when the maps are updated. You need to go back and change that specific language and bring it into compliance.
Okay, then the specific dates it is. So there are two other definitions. Functionally dependent use and highest adjacent grade. I could not find either of those definitions being used. Do we need them?
Possibly not.
Okay.
The boilerplate that we're provided is strictly reviewed. It's actually Department of Conservation and Recreation who oversees the approval of this at the state level. They insist on including all of the boilerplate that we can squeeze into it. And so recognizing that it's superfluous, I am inclined to suggest maintaining it for the sake of their request.
All right. Okay, that's fine. So for the definition of new construction, so it's defined as structures for which the start of construction commenced on or after the effective date of the first floodplain management code, regulation, ordinance, or standard adopted by the authority having jurisdiction.
Okay.
Is that date in the future?
That is ambiguous language, I agree. It shouldn't be, of course.
Yeah, so I was going to say, because like a first date is, it's a first date and it doesn't change. So I mean, maybe if that might be a place to consider actually putting it a date.
Okay.
So under definition of substantial repair of a foundation, there's a bit that reads 780 CMR square bracket, as amended by MA in 9th edition BC, close square bracket. Just minor suggestion to reword that to 780 CMR, comma, as amended by Massachusetts in the 9th edition building code.
Okay.
So spelling out BC, and I'm not aware of any other place in the bylaw that uses square brackets as parentheticals, so it's just a little consistency thing.
Yeah.
Yes, in 572, there's, in boundaries, it introduces the term structure, which has a unique definition, a unique meaning in this section, and it also introduces the term variance. I'd suggest moving the definition of variance from 572 to 579, because that's the only place where variance is used.
I think that's perfectly acceptable.
And last comment, in 574 applicability, the last sentence says, the extent of the floodplain district shall be determined by the Conservation Commission. This seems like a departure from the definition of floodplain district, which states that it's determined by maps. So I don't know if that last sentence could be removed, or if there is another way to make it dovetail a little better.
I think the answer to this one might require a bit of thinking and some more context. So
Okay.
The initial language included that sentence. This isn't new or changed from what the bylaw currently says. And I believe that maintaining the contiguity of Conservation Commission jurisdiction and the floodplain extents is like the rationale behind that.
Okay.
Right? So in as much as we could remove or change this, I don't see any problem with it, but I think maybe we would want to to ensure that there's no inadvertent consequence to.
Okay,
that overlay.
that's fair. I'm just flagging it.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so I promise, this is the last one.
Okay.
So 5712, compliant with court decisions.
Yes.
This sort of reads like a severability clause, but not quite like a severability clause. I'm kind of wondering, so normally these things say if a court says you can't do this thing in your bylaw, well then you can't do that thing in the bylaw, but you're going to keep the rest of the bylaw that the court had no issue with. There's legalese ways to say that, and I'm wondering if section 1.6 would actually cover it, which is just like the non-severability section for the entire bylaw. The section on signs has its own non-severability thing, but this is what's in here with compliance with court decisions. It kind of says, well, if the court says you can't do this, well, then we're going to make some changes, but it doesn't really have the severability part that says the rest of the bylaw stands.
Right.
So that may be a conversation with town council.
That makes sense. I think they're complementary.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I didn't catch the fact of the town having the capacity to revisit and promulgate new standards in order to comply with the court's decision. So I think that is additive to the sort of powers that the town has, and complements, you said 1.6, very well. I mean, it is a nice addition in that we have another bite at the apple. It doesn't necessarily strike down this section or the whole zoning bylaw, of course. It just means that we're able to revise.
Well, I mean, usually when we find out that there's something in our bylaw that's unenforceable, the people who do the enforcement know what the unenforceable bits are, and we try to, change them the next year around.
Right. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's nothing further.
Steve, do you mind sending those notes to Claire?
Yes, I will. I will do that when I get home.
Thank you. Thank you. Vince?
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for David for bringing this. Again, like Steve, all of my comments will be technicalities or about form rather than substance, and I will send them to Director Ricker. We're being a bit weird about the definition of floodplain district. Like most of our zoning districts, we don't define them in the definitions section. We define them in the section of the bylaw that describes them, which in this case is section 5.7.2. So like in the model bylaw, which I looked at for the floodplain district, in 5.7.2 boundaries, they have the definition of the floodplain district, but for some reason we're moving that to our definitions section, and then we're just saying refer to the definitions section to see the description of the floodplain district. So that seems odd to me. I would recommend moving the description of the floodplain district back to 5.7.2 unless there's some reason not to. I'm going to disagree with Steve on substantial repair of a foundation where there's the text in brackets. I think that text is superfluous. There were a bunch of these references in the original model bylaw. We took them all out. They referred to like the federal Code of Federal Regulations. This one refers to the 9th edition of the building code, which is has been replaced by the 10th edition of the building code, so it's out of date. In the definite...
Can I comment on that one quickly?
Yes.
We got feedback from DCR that it is okay to remove the references, and so that one can come out.
Yeah, to me, they add nothing in terms of meaning to the bylaw. In another definition, in the definition of violation, it references section 60.3, but it's not clear what it's referring to. We don't have a section 60.3. I think it's referring to the Code of Federal Regulations. Just see if that reference can be taken out or modified. In 5.7.1b, where it's talking about the purpose, B, basically, it's two sentences. The second sentence appears to be a definition of a floodway, but we have also already added a definition of floodway in the definition section. So it seems to me like this sentence, which is defining floodway again, could be removed. And if we're defining terms like floodway, should be capitalized throughout the text because they are defined terms. The purposes section is very lengthy. It seems to me like we kept most of our original purposes and we added some new purposes based on the model zoning bylaw. And my suggestion there was just that we have new purposes F, G, and H that cover the same ground as our old purpose E. And maybe E could be eliminated. You can take a look at that.
So is E, prevent the occurrence of public emergencies?
Safety and purity of water.
So E is protect the safety and purity of water, control and containment of sewage, dangers due to flooding, and to me that's covered by the next three that we're adding, which have to do with prevent the occurrence of public emergencies. So what I'm suggesting is we'd actually strike a section of our old purposes,
Yes.
E, and then would go ahead and add the new measures, except we'd be numbering them E, F, and G instead of F, G, and H.
Got it. I have a new version in front of me that does exactly that. That was one of the most recent changes that we made.
Perfect. And my last comment, and then I promise I'll stop, is there's just two definitions in section 5.7.2, whereas most of the terms we're defining in the definition section. So Steve mentioned the definition of, was it variance? And there was also the definition of structure. If there's a way to have those definitions be somewhere more logical and easier to find, that would be great. I don't have a specific suggestion as to where.
Okay. You can take a look at it.
The challenge with those two terms in
Already
particular
defined.
is variance is defined in state law and structure is already defined in our bylaw.
That's it.
Thank you, Vince. Shana?
Great. So thank you for going through this with me earlier this week. I really appreciate it. So this addresses the concerns I stated last week about, I think it was Article 47. Although what Vince raises about the location of definition of floodplain district is a good note, and we should look at that. And I actually think that between Steve and Vince, they've covered all of my other comments, and so I'm just gonna table it.
Thank you. Rachel?
Thank you. Most of my items were covered by others. Again, it's challenging. We are trying to reduce complexity of our bylaw, and obviously we know that this is FEMA mandated, and this sure doesn't support that goal. But I certainly understand where this is coming from. To add to the complexity just of how we do things in Arlington, I know that you, under Section 2 definitions, we are adding this whole other section that is similar to the way that other sections are highlighted in our gold background here with the definitions associated with floodplain. From a town meeting process standpoint, you're moving flood map from kind of just the list of the alphabetical list of defined items as well as floodway and replacing them or including them in totality in this new section. My question from, again, a very detail-oriented town meeting read, would we need to strike those separately and then add them to this section? And Steve and Vince, being two very detail-oriented town meeting members, I thought I would pose that question to you or to think about, because I would hate for there to be some sort of technicality after all of the work that has gone into this in terms of, again, the exact format for striking and adding when it is actually changing where it's being identified.
There is, I believe that's a great catch. I believe Ms. Zember is right. In order to move something, you have to strike it and then add it.
Okay.
Sorry to
Otherwise,
add
it's-
more
okay.
complexity to this. I just would hate for it to be.
I had the same question, and I wondered about the motion language, like the actual warrant. Are we covered enough in that to be able to accomplish what we're discussing now?
I believe so, because you are still amending Section 2 definitions. You are moving the definition from, again, kind of the alphabetical list to a special definitions associated with floodplain area, per my read. But again, if others feel differently, that's how I read it.
No, thank you for that. We'll make sure to do that.
That's all.
Thank you. I have no additional comments. I just have one request. Steve, are you going to be able to stand up and clarify this in town meeting?
Well, I am going to.
Because this is really complicated.
Oh, yeah.
And I look at this thing, they're not going to understand. They're going to be questions.
So I would hope that Mr. Morgan would be available. If not, one of the. I am reasonably familiar with. I feel like I would prefer to have the advantage of Mr. Morgan's expertise. In the event that something else came up, I'd feel comfortable with this.
Okay, because I'm lost.
I plan to be there.
Okay, thank you. With that,
Because, you know, it's always good to have the person who knows their stuff the best explaining it to town meeting. And in this case, Mr. Morgan, I believe that would be you.
I'm going to ask for a motion to continue this hearing to Monday, March 16th.
So motion.
Do I have? Steve?
Yes.
Vince?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
I'm a yes too. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
The next
Thank
agenda.
you so much for all this work.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, likewise.
This is gonna. The next agenda item is open forum. Does anybody wish to speak? Yes, please. Patience. Yes, please. Thank you for having a lot of patience to go all through this.
So my name is Wendy Richter. I'm 12 Browder Place, resident of Arlington. This is a question for the redevelopment board to consider. I was on the residential design guidelines committee. And at that time, which was probably 5-6 years, I mean, it was before the pandemic, there was talk of doing a multifamily guideline. And my question to you is, has the residential guidelines document been useful, and would a multifamily similar process be useful to the board?
That's a very good question. Residential guidelines, we don't really deal with that much because it's usually in the ZBA that does that. That's a good question to ask them. But your second part of the question, I would say, I think, me personally, I would say it would be very helpful. Let me open up to the rest of the board and see what they say. Rachel?
I think that's a great question. It's something that the board has discussed, not at length, but it's certainly come up before, both in terms of multifamily as well as perhaps creating a more robust business and commercial set of guidelines. In terms of mixed use, that is, so there are a couple of efforts that are going on right now that the board is involved in, including a look at the zoning for the Arlington Heights district. Not, to be quite honest, not just thinking about it from a business district standpoint, but from a mixed use standpoint. And so some of the work that is planned includes architectural and design review and alignment with members of the town in terms of providing more guidelines within that district. So I think rather than just saying, yes, that's something that we'd love to look at in the future, I just wanted to bring to light some of the areas that I think start working towards what you're speaking to that are already underway with the town. But yes, I think that is well observed.
Any of the board, Shin, any comments on it, or Steve or Vince?
I think it would depend a lot on what was proposed. If, is it a carrot or is it a stick? Is it a carrot in the sense that if you comply with certain guidelines, then you get expedited permitting, or is it a stick in the sense that it's a tool that we use to punish the projects or slow down and revise the projects that are submitting a low effort design? Is it something that we would end up applying to kind of drag down the really high quality projects that we might get, but that aren't quite complying with our guidelines? Or is it something that would be really constructive and that would bring up the baseline of quality? So I think it would be a challenge to construct a guide that would reliably assemble the design opinions of the 44,000 people who live in Arlington. Like, you ask people about how buildings look and they have a lot of complaints, but I think it would be a challenge to create a document that would be like thorough and at the same time fair and represent everyone's, make everyone happy. But it's possible that we could expand our very limited set of guidelines. Like, for example, we don't allow the vents for your laundry and dryer exhaust vents on the front facade. That's a design guideline, and I think we could potentially expand that to give developers some guidance without being unnecessarily restrictive.
Steve, anything?
Well, prior to joining this board, I was a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And yes, the residential design guidelines for single and two-family dwellings were regularly used. In some cases, applicants, they made a positive difference where an applicant said, that's a good idea, I'll do that. And in some cases, the applicant would say, well, we tried it and it just didn't work out, so we're not going to follow it, and here's why. I guess I'd like to philosophizing a little bit here, and pardon me for doing this. There is a very technical aspect to architecture in terms of building codes, fire codes, accessibility, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also an aesthetic portion. And to me, the aesthetic portion, there's, on one element, it's kind of like, well, what is bad architecture? Well, what is bad art? And I think that, you may have some I have mixed feelings, but I might be persuaded by if someone could cite an example of, say, multifamily design guidelines in another community that worked reasonably, that people felt worked reasonably well. As much as, it's one of the comments I hear occasionally, well, we don't want cookie cutter this, that, or the other thing. And one of my concerns about having design guidelines is that, well, you've just set out the plate of cookies. So I'm on the fence.
All right.
So one thing that I have seen often for historic districts, but also for overlay districts in various municipalities is they're not design guidelines so much as a compendium of design elements that are seen sort of throughout the district. And here are some interesting cornices that are seen throughout the district that are sort of are Arlington, are emblematic of this district, that can help, I think give kernels of ideas or give context to designers looking for that context, looking for those ideas, but when it becomes sites are so unique, so specific that when guidelines are when it becomes sort of dictated guidelines as opposed to suggestions of ideas, I think it can be challenging.
Hopefully that answers.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we are about to issue an RFP for commercial and multi-use design guidelines. Before I started the town meeting, I believe in 2022, appropriated funds for this project. This is the last year that we are able to maintain those funds, but it is a project that we're looking to get underway here within the next few weeks. So we are looking into it. I mean, one of the challenges is with guidelines, and I appreciate all the thoughtful comments here this evening, are how enforceable are they? And how useful are they to developers? But I think these are questions that we can work through as part of this project, and encourage folks to get involved. As we launch into public comment, and thank you to the board for this great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other, I close open forum and open new business. Anybody have new business?
I have some new business.
Claire first.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Steve. I just wanted to remind the board, we did get a due date on when our ARB report to town meeting is due to the select board, and that is April 13th. So that means our timeline for warrant article hearings, March 30th, as you know, the board will deliberate and vote favorable action or no action on the zoning articles. On April 2nd, DPCD will post the draft report with your agenda. On April 6th, the ARB will vote to approve the report with any revisions. One other item of new business. The IT department has asked me to note that anyone with a town email address will soon be required to use two-factor identification. And a representative from IT will be coming to a future meeting to show us all exactly how to do that. But they wanted me to make that request to the board, or let the board know that that is going to be happening here in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Can I make a request that would happen after town meeting?
I will check in with them, sure.
Because it would help.
Yeah.
We got quite a tight schedule right now.
Quite a bit going on, absolutely.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, so my new business is 230 Mass Ave.
Okay.
Well, it's an apartment. It's a 3-story apartment building that's just down the block between, from the Capitol Theater, and it crossed my radar twice in the last week. And yeah, well, anyway, so the first time it crossed my radar, a town meeting member that I follow on social media happened to dig up an advertisement for those apartments that ran in the Arlington Advocate in November of 1926. So the building was billed as Arlington's first modern 3-bedroom apartments, complete with refrigerator, stove, and laundry in the basement. The second, which, yeah, it's a cool little bit of history, and it's a cool little building. Anyway, so the second place where this crossed my path was skimming through the Warren Group's list of real estate transactions. One of those condos changed hands. So I went and started looking around it on the town's GIS maps, and So it's a building with 13 apartments. It's on a lot that's 6,700 square feet, and it's got a parking ratio of roughly 1/2, which seems to be very, very much in line with some of the things that we've been permitting under the MBTA Communities Multifamily District. So I'm just like a little bit happy to see that, you know, we can take the things that people built 100 years ago because they made sense and filled a need, and we can start to do some of that again. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else? Seeing none, I will close new business. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Steve?
Yes.
Vince?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
I'm a yes too. Thank you very much.